Just sit back and switch. Okay. We're good.
We're ready to go live. So that's when I actually go to the great fun on. She's ready to go. Okay. Super.
under the direction of Alejandro Jaime Salazar. And our PEP squad and performance is under the direction of Gina Zamora. And I just want to give our student performers a big round of applause because they really did an amazing job to welcome us. I'm Leticia Osuna. I'm the SAISD Board Trustee for Single Member 3, and we are here for a redistricting town hall and a meet and greet with our new superintendent. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping announcements to make. First, I want to mention that our concessions is in the front, and they are provided by the Family and Community Engagement Specialist, Sarah Smith, and school parents and volunteers. The proceeds from their sale will support family engagement activities on the campus. So please stop by and get a snack. Everyone should have signed in as they came in, and we have handouts in Spanish and English for tonight's meeting, plus tickets for door prizes, and we will announce winners at the end of the festivities tonight. I also want to recognize Dr. Penny Pruitt, who is the Highlands High School principal, and the outstanding teachers and staff from this campus for their support in hosting the event. I really want to thank y'all. We have our project consultants as well from Welsh and Gallegos, Trevino, Kyle, and Robinson, and they're here to go over on the information on our redistricting. I want again to remind our audience that we have headsets available for in-person Spanish interpretation. And if you are watching from home on the Zoom session, we have interpreting happening there as well. And you can get the headsets at the sign-in table at the entrance. We invite you to get involved in this community engagement process to ask questions and provide feedback about the proposed redistricting changes. And there are some ways that you can ask questions and get more information, and we'll go into a lot of detail about that later. So our agenda for this evening will be a welcome. You'll get a chance to hear from our new superintendent. And then we will have a presentation about the redistricting process. And this will include maps of the area and what will change. And then we will have an opportunity for community feedback and questions. And we're really hoping that if you are watching online on Zoom, that you take the opportunity to kind of look at this information and feel free to ask us questions. This isn't the only window for questions. There is availability after this, and we will go over our feedback platforms and communication that we're going to be opening up so that we can make sure that you're heard. So, do the next slide. So a really good question, and it's come up in some of our other town halls. It's what is redistricting? And it's the process of dividing up our district into the single member represented areas based on every 10 years census. As our populations change, we have to keep the size of the district's population in balance with each other. And that means that we have to kind of change some of the district lines. The big impact to most of you will be on voting for a trustee. It really doesn't change a lot of the feeder. It won't change where the kids are going to school according to the feeder patterns. It will change the single member district representation. So you may be, after this redistricting process, you may have one trustee that you vote for in one election, and in the next election, it may be a different district and a different trustee. So that's really why we want you to know where the district lines are so that you understand who is representing you in the SAISD school district. So as you can see right now, our District 3 is made up of these campuses. We have Highlands High School, Cass Med High School, Hotwells Middle School, Rogers Middle School, Ball Elementary, Forbes Elementary, Foster, Highland Hills, Shank, Steele Montessori Academy, Democracy Prep at Stewart Academy, and Mission Academy. And these are the campuses inside the District 3 boundary. If you use the QR code showed on the screen, and I believe it will also be on your Zoom screens, and we'll leave this up and we'll return to it later. This will take you to the website where you can submit questions about the redistricting process tonight or in the future. For those joining in person, we'll have a Q&A session after the presentation. And you can also use the chat function in Zoom to submit your questions during tonight's meeting, and we can get to them. We also have the SAISD webpage about redistricting at www.saisd.net/redistricting. And lastly, you can email us at community@saisd.net. And we really hope we get a chance to hear from you. We also want to make sure you know, there is a continued series of town hall meetings. So if you missed this one, there are other opportunities now through October 4th across the district. And we really encourage guests to make a plan of making it in person to one of these meetings or joining us online if you aren't available to join at this particular one through the whole meeting. And I think there'll be a lot of good questions and feedback, and then the presentation from our redistricting representatives will definitely, I think, make sure that you leave with a very clear vision of what redistricting is and isn't. So we'll have information tables in the front with the SAISD Foundation for Family Car Incentive Program. Right now, we're running a big incentive to make sure that if you do have perfect attendance in the district, you and your family have an opportunity to win a new car. And there's an enrollment booth with information about our schools throughout the district and information on our 2020 bond program. And that is in the front of the hall. And I want to express my gratitude to all of our parents, students, teachers, and staff that are dedicated to the students. I am very proud of representing all of the campuses as a trustee in this district. And now I really want to take this opportunity. This is the first time I've had a chance to do this. I want to welcome our new superintendent, Jaime Aquino, who has just joined us. And I want to say some stuff about him because Dr. Aquino really came to our attention. It's not just that he has 35 years in education. He has served in a variety of roles. He's been a teacher, a chief academic officer, a deputy superintendent in some of the largest school districts in the country, New York, Los Angeles, Denver. He stayed connected in the classroom by working collaboratively with educators and administrators. And just in a nutshell, Jaime never really left the classroom. He's just kind of rolled up his one-on-one day-to-day experience and has been able to look at districts from a large perspective and really help us be more effective in the way that we're educating our students. His journey as an immigrant and a teacher really prepared him not just to identify with our students, but our parents and our community. Jaime really understands where our community is coming from, and he has a huge heart. His deep appreciation for our multicultural community and the importance of building close relationships with family is paramount, and I hope everyone has had a chance to see his visits to our campuses and to engage with our parents. I'm very, very pleased. I'm very pleased to be serving with him at this time, and I really look forward to what comes next in our future. Dr. Jaime Aquino.
Buenas noches a todos. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank Trustee Ozuna for those kind words. I'm not so sure if I'm worthy of them, but I am very honored and humble to be the superintendent of the great San Antonio Independent School District. So I'm really grateful to Trustee Ozuna and the entire board for giving me this honor of a lifetime. And I've said it this many times, I don't like the title of superintendent. The only title I've ever cared for is the title of a teacher. So my tenure here is going to be defined by, I'm here not to lead, but to serve our students, our families, our staff, and the city of San Antonio. So, and when I lead, as Trustee Osuna said, I'm going to lead with a teacher's heart. And I've said many times recently that I felt I've died and landed in heaven by being here in the city of San Antonio and the San Antonio Independent School District. I am so grateful that this city really is about familia, it's about the family, and that the community has embraced me and have made me feel really, really welcome, and has allowed me the opportunity to lead as my authentic self. As Trustee Osuna said, I am an immigrant who came to this country 35 years ago, having been recruited by the New York City Department of Education as a bilingual teacher. English is not my first language, and I share that because I feel I am San Antonio. I mean, there's so many little Jaimes in our classrooms, either elementary, middle, and high school, that just look like me. And I am committed to really making miracles happen for all our kids. And one of the things that I want to share with you is, and how are the children? And this comes from a story from the mighty Maasai, which are famous warriors in Africa. And they always ask each other and greet each other, and how are the children? And their answer is always, the children are well. And they put this emphasis on the well-being of the children as the future of their society. So I just want to share some really incredible news on how our children are doing here in the San Antonio Independent School District. We were able to maintain our B rating from the Texas Education Agency. That is incredible. But not only did we maintain, we increased to 2 points. And this is after the most difficult year that we have experienced in public education. And the news get even better because we have 84% of our schools have been rated A, B, or C. And if you want even better news, we have 63% of our schools have been rated A and B. That's an increase from 39. So that shows us that the way kids come to us is no excuse for the way they leave us. So that is incredible in terms of what we have done. And you see the historical trend. And one of the things that I'm really proud is that on our star reading result, we match or surpass on every grade level the pre-pandemic levels. We do still have some work to do in mathematics, and that is all a tribute to the principals, our teachers, our students, and our family. I do want to share some of the great news of single member District 3 as represented by Trustee Osuna. If you look at this, we went from only having 3 schools pre-pandemic that were rated A and B to 9 schools. We tripled the amount of schools that were rated B. And schools that were not rated D or F, we went from 6 to 2. That is incredible after the most difficult year. Roger Middle School increased from an F to a C. In 2019, they were an F. This year ended up a C. That is unbelievable. Foster Elementary and Ball Elementary increased from a D to a B rating. Schenck Elementary School maintained an A rating and earned 4 out of 6 possible distinction designations. And our host today, Highland High School, as well as Forbes Elementary, increased from a C to a B rating. Thank you, Dr. Pruitt, and all the staff for showing that our kids are brilliant. So that is incredible. I also, since we're here, I do want to acknowledge the Owls having won the game. We were there on Saturday, Trustee, and Iosuna play against Burbank, and they were incredible. It was a really enjoyable game. So proud of all of you, so proud of the entire district. As you can see, from 2017, where we had almost 24,000 students attending a failing school. Last year, we ended up with 2,700. Still a lot, but look at that decrease. We're nowhere near where we ought to be as a school district, but we're also nowhere near where we used to be. And that's a good place. We're showing that we are progressing. And this year, we are reaching for the sky because our kids are worth it. So it is incredible to be here. And I want to talk a little bit about some safety enhancement. As you all know, safety is in the mind of everybody after the events that have happened in our neighboring community, but across the country. As a district, and thanks to our board of trustees, we have earmarked this year an additional $40 million for safety and enhancement. That includes half of them is for physical enhancements of our building and equipment like radios, camera, but half of it is for mental health services for all our students and families. And that shows the commitment from the board to really make a difference in the lives of our kids. We have met all the safety requirements as outlined by the state law by the first day of school. I'm very proud of my team. I see our chief, our school police department, Chief Reyes is here, Lieutenant Cano is here. Thank you for your leadership in ensuring that our kids and our staff are safe, not only the first day of school, but every single day. And I just want to assure you that the district is prepared to address any safety crisis. We were prepared before Uvalde, but we have actually enhanced and revisited our protocol. We are not responding because of the crisis that happened in our neighboring community. We're doing this because as an educator, I care about teaching and learning, but first and foremost is to ensure that the parents trust us when they send their kids to our campuses and that they're going to return safe as well as our staff. So we do this. We have a multi-hazard comprehensive safety plan that addresses any potential crisis. So I do want to say this because I've been asked by many parents many times, Jaime, can you assure that our schools are 100% safe and that nothing is going to happen similar to it happened in other communities? My answer is no. And nobody can assure you across the country that one of these incidents will not happen. But what we can assure you is that we are ready for anything. We have prepared, and if there's a crisis, you better believe that our security led by Chief Reyes, the board, and the entire district has the capacity to address them in a timely fashion. So very proud of that. So our schools are safe. And I encourage you to continue helping us. And as we say, if you see something, say something to let us know. So the news gets better. We talked about the accountability and that we maintain the B rating. But I am happy to stand in front of you today to let you know that as a district, we have exceeded our enrollment projection. We're over 45,000 students strong. That has not happened in many years. It has not happened in many years. We were seeing declining enrollment. This is a testament to the work that our schools and staff are doing when our families and students are choosing the San Antonio Independent School District as a destination district. So we were on a week 4, and it's even gone better. We were projecting 44,676 students. We are at over projection for 772 students. These numbers are so important. If our kids are not in school, they cannot learn. And that's why we push attendance. There's also another reason why we push attendance. For every percentage increase of our students attending, the district gets $3.1 million. $3.1 million that we're committed to reinvesting in our students and in our school. So we want our kids here to learn, but it also helps us better serve and meet their needs. And I think I want to end with this. Under the direction, we had a retreat with our board, and we came up with our declaration statement. And this is where we are heading, and that we declare the possibility that the San Antonio ISD is an inclusive familia that is the destination for transformational learning that makes the impossible a reality by demonstrating a relentless and urgent commitment to love, nurture, and teach all our students as if they were our own, so that they can have the power to shape the world and make it a better place for all. I'm really proud of this declaration statement that we worked together with the board. I think it's the only declaration statement in the nation that has a word in Spanish. And we were strategic because to use the word family, which is the same meaning as the word familia, did not capture the essence of the great city of San Antonio, where we are truly a familia. And we talk about this. We want to make the impossible happen for public education. We are committed to making miracles happen for all our kids by making SAISD a destination district. And a destination district for us is a district that families and students choose to come because of a commitment to a well-rounded education. And we have evidence of 772 new students. But we are also as committed to making this a destination place for our staff. We want our staff to come to our district because it is a place that is going to be so rewarding and fulfilling, and they're going to have the ability to perfect their craft in their quest to make the impossible happen by ensuring that all students succeed to their fullest potential. I want to share, and Trustee Osuna mentioned this, how important attendance it is. And we have an incredible partnership with the San Antonio ISD Foundation. And I see the executive director and the head of the foundation, Judy Gilhood. Thank you, Judy, for everything you do to allow us to really make a difference in the life of our kids. But what we are doing, thanks to the generosity of the foundation and folks like Don Frost from the Frost Bank, Rick Kempeder from Toyota, and many others, that we are going to be able at the end of the school year for students who have improved attendance or perfect attendance, that their names are going to go into a drawing and they have the possibility of winning a brand new car. And that is thanks to the foundation. You can see, if you go to the SAISDfoundation.com, you will see more information about the parameters. And I do think I'm not doing this. Do we have the video? Are you showing the video? Let's show you what the car would look like.
The SAISD Foundation has got something you can rap about. Get in gear for good attendance. Every day your child attends school makes you one step closer to becoming the owner of a brand new Toyota RAV4. Visit SAISDfoundation.com to see how you can attend, achieve, and win.
So you can attend, achieve, by getting the skills of being productive citizen, and at the same time, the possibility of winning a brand new Toyota RAV4. But with the generosity of our foundation, we are also going to be every 9 weeks, we're going to be giving gifts to students in school who have exhibited an improved attendance. So thank you for that. So thank you all for being here, for supporting the SAISD. And before I turn it back to trustees so we can go with the part of the program on redistricting, I want to acknowledge our American Sign Language interpreters. So thank you. Thank you for doing that, as well as our Spanish translators that are in the back for our audience who are watching us remotely and want to make sure they have access. So important. Thank you to trustee and the entire board for making these meetings accessible to as many parents and community. Thank you very much.
How do you follow that? At this point, I want to introduce our consultant group. As a board, we went through a number of candidate firms looking for a firm that best understood San Antonio's demographics and understood the nature of our school district to work with us to draw these boundary lines that we're presenting to you today. Walsh, Gallegos, Trevino, Kyle, and Robinson provide legal service to school districts and related entities in Texas across a variety of areas: employment, special education, constitutional law, civil rights, and business. With offices throughout Texas, they have served districts across the state with prompt, efficient, and reliable representation since 1983. We as a district are looking towards their attorneys to be our advocates in school, governmental law, including employment, special education, constitutional law, civil rights, construction, and business. So when we present these boundaries to our community, you know that we have been thinking about all of the areas of representation and all of the rules around drawing district boundaries and making sure that the distribution of the population and our representation of trustees across our schools is fair and balanced, and it serves us all well. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our attorneys. Here today we have Eddie Hernandez Perez. He also works with Tony Resendez, Andre Macias, and Paloma Perez, who are not represented today. And they will take you through the presentation, including the maps for redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Ozuna and Dr. Aquino for such wonderful news about the school district. I'm a resident of the school district, so I love to hear what's happening. What we're going to walk through today is a brief presentation on San Antonio ISD's redistricting process. We're going to touch a little bit on a couple of things, some high notes for everybody. One is going to be what is redistricting, why we as a school district need to think about it, why we're doing it now. And Trustee Ozuna did a wonderful job of outlining the process, and I'll just touch on a few of those high notes. We're going to discuss San Antonio ISD's governance structure and how that ties into redistricting. We're going to discuss requirements for redistricting and what occurs after the process is complete. And of course, we're going to provide some information about how you as members of the community can provide feedback on the process. So what is redistricting? Redistricting, briefly, is a process by which the geographic boundaries of the school district are drawn and redrawn every 10 years following the changes in population. And the reason it's every 10 years is because we realize that there are changes in population gradually, of course, but every 10 years we have the census for the country, which gives us clear data about what that looks like. And so redistricting is a rebalancing of populations among school district or single member trustee districts in accordance with the census numbers. So how does that tie into San Antonio ISD's governance structure? Well, San Antonio ISD is governed by a board of trustees, 7 members in that board, and each trustee is elected to a single member district. Those districts are numbered 1 through 7, and they're geographically contained. So that means if you are in District 3, like we are today, you would only vote for trustee for that district. That's why it's a single member district. That's not the only governance form, but that is the form that SAISD has, and it is what triggers a requirement to redistrict when we need to balance a population. So why is San Antonio ISD redistricting? Well, it's required on 2 fronts, one on the federal level and then one on the state level. And on the state level, the Texas Education Code requires a board to redivide single member districts if the census data indicates that the population of the most populous district exceeds the population of the least populous district by more than 10%. So if we have a graph, and we will shortly, a table that shows the populations, if you look at the largest school district and the smallest school district, if there's a difference of more than 10%, that triggers our responsibility to redistrict. So the 2020 census data that we have for San Antonio ISD indicates that number has exceeded the 10% threshold, and it's almost more than double. Well, it has more than doubled at 21.7%. Again, that's the differential between the largest the largest single member district and the smallest single member district. And because of that, the school board must redistrict. What are the requirements of redistricting? There are a couple of them that I'll touch on here. First is that single member districts, again, must have a differential between the largest district and the smallest school district of no more than 10%. Single member districts must be compact and contiguous. Those are fancy lawyer words to mean that they have to be geographically contained. So we can't have an island of population that is not geographically connected to the member district that it belongs to. And more or less, they have to make sense. They have to follow geographic boundaries, which we'll get into in a second. And we must comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which boils down to we must not discriminate when we are redistricting. And again, that total deviation between the largest school district or this largest single member district and the smallest cannot exceed 10%. There are also additional criteria that the board has taken into account, and many other governmental entities take into account when they redistrict. The first is easily identifiable boundaries. The next is preserving an incumbent constituency relations and maintaining communities of interest and keeping neighborhoods together. What you'll see in the thought process behind the board and in the proposed map that we'll look at in a second is that one of the ways the board has looked at and defined communities of interest is by feeder pattern. So to the extent possible, the board has looked at keeping feeder patterns together. So where there's an opportunity to move one campus back into its feeder pattern to fall under the same trustee, the board has sought to do that. And we'll go over what that looks like here. So I mentioned the census data. And so this is what the census data told us following the 2020 census. And this is what would apply if there were no changes made, if there were no changes proposed. The big takeaway here is that final number down at the bottom, the differential of 21.7%. We've exceeded the 10% threshold, so that again triggers our responsibility, our duty to redistrict. You'll notice that the largest population is found in District 2 with a little over 47,000 residents. And the smallest was District 4 with just around or just below 39,000. And that's where we get that differential. And the other trustee single member districts fall in between those, the largest and the smallest district. So here are two maps that I'll leave up for a second so that you can kind of study and absorb a little bit. The first is the current map. So again, if we did not make any changes to this map, we would have that 21.7% differential, which is unacceptable by statute. So again, that's why we must redistrict. And on the right, we have a revised map, which the board has put much thought into and tweaked using the existing boundaries, using those criteria that we went over earlier. And a couple of things just for folks looking at the maps here in person and online. The dark lines indicate the current map. And then as we transition into the revised map, you'll see that the colors change. So if there's a change in color or an extension or a shrinking of one of the colors of the trustee single member districts, that means that the geographic boundaries have changed. So I mentioned District 2 currently without any changes has the single largest population for all of the single member districts. So that means that District 2 must be rebalanced. It's too populous, and so we need to give some of that population to other single member districts that have a smaller population so that we get down to that 10% or lower differential. Districts are adjusted to run along easily identifiable boundaries whenever possible. The districts are adjusted to align with high school feeder patterns as discussed previously, and existing boundaries are maintained where possible. And it may not be obvious why we try to maintain current boundaries, but the reason that it's important is because folks currently know who they vote for, they know who their representative is, and it would not be it would create a situation where folks may not know who they're voting for if we didn't put a lot of thought into maintaining that relationship. So that's why that's important. Following the 2020 census, the district has a proposed map that the Board of Trustees has looked at, and if adopted, that differential, if you recall, we're at 21.7%. If adopted, that differential would go down to below that 10% differential, down to 9.1%. Now, a question that we often get is, well, can we get that number down to zero? Or should it be a goal to get it as close to zero as possible? It may seem that that's, I guess I should say it's easier said than done. When you start moving populations around, it's all a balancing act. And so if we try to get down to that zero figure, we may be compromising communities of interest, for example, or we may need to move unnecessarily a campus from one feeder pattern to another, again, only for voting for a single member trustee. There will be no change as a result of redistricting to campuses that kids actually attend. So attendance boundaries are not being impacted at all. I know that's front of mind for most parents. The only thing that will change potentially, if you're in one of these communities that's moving from one district to another, is the trustee that you vote for. That's the only change that's being proposed. So I'm going to walk through some brief changes. I'll briefly touch on changes to 6 of the single member districts. There's one, District 5, that does not have any proposed changes because it still fell within that 10% range, so there was no need to make any change. I'll briefly touch on all 6 of the changes or 6 of the districts, but I'm going to focus in on District 3 because that's where we find ourselves today. So District 1, you'll notice, as kind of a preview to District 3's, there's a boundary, there's that existing boundary in the northwest corner of District 3. Again, that's current boundary, but you'll see that there's a section there, which is more or less the Monte Vista neighborhood, that is moving from previously being within District 1, and the color has changed, so it's moving into District 6. That's one of the proposed changes there for District 1. Whoops. For District 2, Again, District 2 was the most populous, so we needed to find a way to reduce the population in District 2. And the way that we did that, or that the board has proposed to do that, is by moving portions of District 2 to District 4 here in this area, and then down to District 2 or District 3 down here in this area. So the northern boundary there of District 3. And we'll touch on those a little more in detail here in a sec. So for District 3, again, that change is in the northern portion where we're gaining a section from District 2. And then there's also a small portion there where we're gaining from District 4. And I'll get into some of those details here in a second. So actually, let's spend some time here. So in that northern portion, we are adding population to District 3, and the boundary is moving down to that. Let's see, this section here that has changed. That boundary is Hammond Avenue. There's a slight change here that's moving north to south, and that street is South Mittman Street. There's another change here that's Rigsby. And then there's a little portion here that's carved out, and we'll go into that change here in a second. So District 4, again, giving up. It's one of the larger populations here, so they gave up a portion there to District 3. District 5, I mentioned there's no change to District 5. There was no need to move any of the boundaries to keep it within compliance. And so the trustees in this proposed map do not have any proposed changes to District 5. For District 6, I mentioned that change, adding the Monte Vista area to District 6. There was also a move of the Beacon Hill feeder to the Beacon Hill feeder pattern, again, to keep it in line with the feeding into Edison. And then there were some small changes, moving an elementary school, Arnold Elementary, from District 6 to District 7, again, to maintain the feeder pattern there. And then District 7 gained some population in the north here. That new boundary is Vance Jackson, and that had the goal of moving Arnold Elementary, again, putting it into that District 7 feeder pattern. It gave up a portion there of the Beacon Hill area. And then this was a commercial area. I believe this is an HEB that was not a big population, but we're keeping the boundaries a little more clean. So rather than having that section carved out, it just goes straight down I-10. So some campus changes here. Some campus changes that I'm going to run through here quickly. Arnold Elementary goes from District 6 to District 7. Smith Elementary goes from District 2 to District 4. And Highland Park Elementary goes from single member District 4 to single member District 3. And so I'm going to focus in on that final change. So I mentioned earlier, there's a little blip that moves from District 4 to District 3, and that is Highland Park Elementary. And again, the idea is to restore the feeder pattern as best we can. So next steps, a couple of next steps in the redistricting process. The first is what we're doing here today. It's gathering community input. And there are a couple of avenues. This is the second of 6 community meetings. There will be another one tomorrow and a couple more over the next several weeks. So of course, for folks that are interested in attending more than one meeting, you're more than welcome. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your feeder pattern. If you have questions that you'd like answered, that's what this time and space is set up for. The Board of Trustees must, after gathering community input, approve a map. And following the approval of the map, the board must, within 30 days of that approval, provide notice to the county of the changes. And that is so that the county can start to prepare for the next election. And regarding the next election, it's scheduled for May 6th, 2023. And that will be the first election that incorporates the new map that is adopted. SAISD, once the map has been approved, again, we'll communicate that to the county. So some additional information. One is that redistricting will not change the outermost boundaries of SAISD. So we're not encroaching into the another area, another school district's area. The outer boundaries will remain the same. And just to reiterate, redistricting does not impact school attendance zones. So that is an entirely different process. It's not being proposed. We're not contemplating that at the moment. And so again, redistricting, the only change potentially if you're in one of the areas that moves from one district to another is you may vote for a different single member trustee for the school board. And redistricting, it's not something that the board decided to do just out of nowhere. The reasoning behind it is, again, those census numbers, our districts are out of balance, our single member districts are out of balance. And so the process is meant to bring us back into compliance with that no larger than 10% differential. I mentioned the community meetings, and here's a complete list. This is also on the district's website. There are folks that are joining us via Zoom, and so you can join us via Zoom in person at one or as many as you'd like to attend. And you can also submit feedback via email, and that email address is here, community@saisd.net. We encourage you to submit those questions, comments, concerns, and the board is really trying to reach out to the community, gather your input, and take all of those thoughts and considerations into account before finalizing a map. And I mentioned earlier, but District 5 again has no proposed changes, and so there will not be a community meeting in District 5. But of course, if folks in District 5 are interested in attending any of the meetings, they're more than welcome to if they have any questions about the process. So I will leave this slide up here. It's where you can find on the district's website information about redistricting. And of course, that email, if you have any questions at all, concerns, comments for the board's consideration, you can submit that to community@saisd.net. So I'll leave that up. That's all I have. That's all part of the formal presentation. And let me see, I'm monitoring the chat here to see if there are any questions that have come in via chat. I don't see that there have been any questions. Are there any questions here in person? I'm happy to discuss as well.
Mention for the record viewers, some of the frequently asked questions at the other town halls, just so we can, or just to make sure.
So one of the questions at the last talk was, should we have done the changes lower than the 9.1? One of the questions that was posed, as you recall, from the previous town hall was right now with this proposed is at a 9.1, the differential between the single member district. So the question was, why didn't we aim to have a lower threshold? Because in the next 10 years, there is the possibility that one of the member district, being those so close, can exceed that 10% threshold.
That's a great question. It's and it's certainly a reasonable goal to think that would make sense. And certainly under perfect circumstances, the closer we can get to zero, the better. As I believe I may have touched on earlier, that's just easier said than done. And so once you start moving one line, and the board has had a couple of opportunities to kind of play with the lines in real time and see what happens to population. So as you try to get closer and closer to zero, it's a question of priorities. And so if we get closer to zero, we may have a map that is, we'll just say a 5% differential, which is almost half of what we currently are. Yes, that would be good, but we get to a point where we start to sacrifice other important aspects. So One that I know is very important to the board is those communities of interest. And so in order to get a lower number, we may have to split a community, or we may have to move a boundary to the point where maybe the communities are very different and they may not vote the same way, or they may not have the same thoughts. But if we keep those communities where they're part of independently part of a community that they share, they all go to the same elementary school, they all go to the same middle school, the same high school, they're going to have a lot more in common than folks that maybe don't share that in common. So it's all about priorities, and we can certainly strive to get lower. It's just it may have unintended consequences. So it's not as easy as just lowering that number.
The other question that was posed is, why did you use the general population as opposed to the population of registered voters?
That's a great question also. So when we are redistricting, we're bound by a couple of things. I mentioned the federal requirements, and what we're looking at there is the United States Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, for example. And so the Constitution says we count people. And so it's not citizens, even it's just the total population. And so that's why we use that total number. There are other, so that's the number that we're bound to. And so again, back on the theme of unintended consequences, if we were to prioritize voters, for example, not all populations vote equally. And so we may get to a point where maybe the voting populations are balanced, but now the actual populations are out of balance, which would violate the principle of one person, one vote. And so the idea is that if you have a very large population of individuals voting for one member district or one single member trustee, and you have another population that's much smaller that is also voting for one trustee, the representation is different. So you have a smaller group of individuals that have the same voice as a much larger group of individuals. And that's where we find ourselves out of balance with the constitutional requirements of redistricting.
Two more questions that I recall from the previous town hall was, since you're using the census count, can those number include undocumented residents?
Yes, they are. They're supposed to. That they're supposed to. And so there was some controversy about whether enough outreach was made, for example, whether there were perhaps questions that may have deterred some folks from answering. And so unfortunately, 2020, for many reasons, is unique in terms of census collecting. One, we had the pandemic. So for better or worse, it's highly likely that populations were undercounted. Maybe folks didn't want to answer the door. If someone from the census, maybe they don't have as reliable an internet connection to where they can log in and kind of raise their hand and say that they're present. So there's a whole number of factors there that may impact the total count. But for better or worse, those census numbers are what we have. And so that's what we're going to be held to. And so, I think we all wish we could have had a perfect count, but yes, but to answer the question directly, it's supposed to count all people, not just citizens.
Thank you. The last question, Eddie, you did mention it during your presentation, but I think it's really important for parents so you can underscore. You heard the point that you made. So the question was, does this, if I'm a parent, that this affect the attendance boundary of where my child will attend? Will it require me moving my child from the current school to a different school?
So no, the short answer is no. It's not going to impact the current attendance zones. As a parent, it's very important. Maybe as I recall, the question was posed before. It's a big difference. A 5-minute walk is very different than a 15-minute drive. And so that's obviously very important. But no, attendance boundaries will not change. So if your student is zoned to one school currently, or you've opted into another school that is maybe outside of your regular attendance boundary, that will not change. This process does not impact attendance.
So to the communication team, do we have any Any questions in the chat? No? Okay. Thank you.
So I want to thank everyone who attended. I want to remind you that redistricting is important. It's about representation of our community over our district resources and how we best serve our community. So please be watching for our redistricting map so that you are well aware of who your representative will be should you be in one of the areas that is in flux. And we just really want to thank everyone who's here in person as well as our online community. And if you're watching a pre-recorded version of this video recording, thank you so much for paying attention to what's going on with our redistricting effort here at the San Antonio Independent School District. Please pay attention to our future outreach and do our future outreach meetings, and do take advantage of our email, our online portal, and even now our chat for any type of feedback you want to offer. Thank you, and everyone have a really great evening.